Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, and community. I am well aware I'm right before lunch, so I'll make this as concise as possible. I'm very happy to be here to provide a look at the Community Development Department, its programs, and its proposed strategic initiatives. The department's mission statement is to develop Brentwood as a high-quality, diverse, and balanced community while protecting natural and agricultural resources. The department is mainly responsible for implementing the City Council policies related to planning, zoning, community enrichment, and housing. The department also oversees the building and development of residential and commercial projects, ensuring that these projects meet and protect public health and safety. The department currently has 23 full-time employees and consists of 4 divisions: affordable housing, development services, neighborhood services, which contains building and community enrichment, and planning. We'll start alphabetically with affordable housing. The program is responsible for making decent, sanitary, and safe housing available to Brentwood residents, workers, and all eligible participants that qualify under the very low, low, or moderate income categories. The program manages the city's 22 affordable rental units, oversees many affordable loans and loan refinances, and manages the affordable housing wait list. This year we received 342 applications to be on our wait list that we had to review, and 142 qualified to be placed on that list. The program is working on several projects in addition to the day-to-day tasks that are on its plate. One of these include following up on recent council direction to update the inclusionary housing ordinance with perhaps a 20 to 25% inclusionary requirement. And we are anticipating the program will be working on a revision to the in lieu fee requirements, which will be discussed in more detail at the next council meeting on the 14th. Next, we have neighborhood services, which consists of the building division and community enrichment, which houses the code enforcement activities. The purpose of the building division is to provide life safety and the safeguarding of property through the enforcement of the California building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical codes, and other codes, laws, and ordinances. The community enrichment program helps keep a healthy, safe, clean, and attractive place to live and work in Brentwood. The division is quite busy. Small staff, I think that's the theme of my presentation, small staff, very busy. As you can see, the average 28 inspections per day. The code case opened and closed this year is averaging about 10, this is year to date, so about 10 per day. That's an average, it fluctuates quite a bit. The department is working on some major process improvements right now. That's the main focus. A major time commitment will be required for the chief building official and finance to work on building fee and job valuation updates. They're just getting that underway right now. And a major improvement to our processes is the implementation of electronic plan check process. So this would replace hard copy submittals of multiple sets of plans, and it would be all submitted electronically, checked electronically, and comments would be returned electronically. This is the wave of the future for building departments all over, and we're very excited to we're just beginning implementation of this, so more to come. So development services works closely with building, and they oversee the operation of the permit center, coordinating building permit and plan review processes, and administering the city's project and permit management software. This division is often the public face of the development process in the city of Brentwood, so they are very customer service oriented and provide excellent customer service. The division's coordination efforts ensure the smooth operation of our department. The theme, they also have a lot of work on their plate. The biggest is the implementation of that online permitting software, so that is being managed by development services. So that would be intaking of electronic plans and electronic permit applications, issuance of electronic permits and comments and plans. Again, this is a sea change for how we do building permits and plan checks in the city of Brentwood. It's the wave of the future, and it's a really exciting modernization of our processes. So this will be rolling out over the next 6 months. Oh, sorry.
Well, I mean, this has been in the plans for a couple of years. Why hasn't? Do you know why it hasn't taken place? I mean, I want to say that the first year I went through. It's been probably since 2016 or this 2017
Right.
since they said we were going to implement this.
Right. So best laid plans, there's been some technological issues between communicating between our online permit tracking software, which is a different platform, and debugging before we roll this out to the public. So it's just taken more time than was anticipated. It hasn't been a turnkey product. I don't want to get into too many details, but it's been challenging for staff to kind of debug the programs.
And has this been in the budget for this since 2017?
That I don't know. I mean, Carrie doesn't either. We can find out. So we're finally at the phase where we feel comfortable that we can roll this out and have a seamless transition for our customers. So we would be doing test runs with trusted customers who are frequent customers of ours who have maybe more straightforward permit submittals, and then we would take it live to the public once we've sort of done that soft rollout.
Alexis, I have a question about that. Is this going to totally eliminate hard copies, or is this going to be the main focus, but also use hard copies for those that don't have accessibility to this?
So the goal would be to eliminate hard copies because so much will be done through that system in terms of calculating permits and routing them. But there will always be people who are just not there. You know, we talked earlier about small businesses or homeowners, owner builders. There will always be people who just, it's just a different capacity or understanding. You know, you might pull a building permit one time in your life and you're not there yet. So there will be a way to accommodate those types of folks.
The digital aspect of this is really exciting. I know in the past, when there are certain projects that have come forward, and for whatever reason that hard copy information can't be found, this will eliminate that entirely. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we do have record retention requirements as well. So over time, things may, over decades, things may be purged. But yes, we will have electronic sets of everything that comes through the building department and the permit center.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up because I've recently, my husband got everything on the OneDrive, so everything's virtual for me. But now I'm going back and I'm finding a lot of my folders are empty because probably it was saved as a document that document is no longer, Word 97 or
Right.
whatever the word was.
Right.
And even PDF files that I had are no longer there. So how can we ensure that as time goes on that we won't lose those things? Are we going to also be doing possible disks or offline hard drive backups so that we don't lose those documents over time?
Yeah, so things will be backed up. In terms of format changes over time, I don't know if one of those PDFs became obsolete or that format. That I'm not as sure about because I'm not a data management expert, but we can certainly find out. But there's definitely hard backups of this that are provided by the service provider. But I'm not sure about if, a format became obsolete like WordPerfect or that I don't know, but we can certainly look into that.
Yeah, I was just shocked that these were MS Word and PDFs. So it's like I was shocked that they just weren't there anymore. So
it's a trade-off between going completely electronic and completely hard copy. There's pros and cons to having only hard copy plans and only electronic. The wave of building departments all over the country is to go fully electronic. So I think we would all be in that same position if a version of Adobe that has been used for 10 years becomes obsolete. We're going to all need to figure this out. It's just part of our normal operating procedures. The same way we would have to purge plans in the old days because we're no longer statutorily required to keep them. There's just no space for them, right? So similar kind of management of data. So the next is the planning division. The purpose of the division is to implement city policies that direct the physical development of the city. This relatively small team processes all development applications and does secret analysis for those applications. They conduct the plan checks and help the public with land use and zoning related questions. The team is about to get a little smaller with the retirement of our senior planner, Debbie Hill. She's worked for the city for 26 years, and so we're about to lose some amazing institutional knowledge, and she will definitely be missed. So again, with the theme, there is a lot on the plate of this division. So the 4 planners are currently working on 3 specific plan updates, a housing element update, an SB 9 ordinance that will be coming to council on the 14th. The council recently requested the implementation of the general plan, open space, and conservation element come back for discussion in February, so we're also working on that. That will be touched on under the strategic initiatives as well.
Why are you under the website overhaul? Well, isn't that IT?
Our particular pages. So
Okay.
every division in our department is going to have to re-envision and update its content. So that does take our staff time too.
Can I ask a quick question about that? I mean, I know that you have the PDF of the projects, and we had talked about having that in Excel so that we could so a resident can download and, you know, be able to filter and things. Is that going to happen soon or no?
Well, so what's on this website right now, I think, is phase 1. So with the website overhaul, we're going to see how we can either bring back the full project pages like we used to have, and minimize the amount of staff time it takes to implement and update those, because that was the main problem. If we can't get a project page that is efficient and for staff to do, something like that interactive spreadsheet would be plan B.
Yeah, if we could get that, I know it's PDF now, if we could get that in Excel, that would be great, because something happened on the back end, because I used to be able to download, save as Word, copy into Excel, and then be able to filter, you know.
The one that's on there today.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
can no longer do that. And I think the agenda, we used to be able to do that with the agenda too, and so something's happening on the back end, the way files are being saved, that it makes it harder for us to use them.
So you used to be able to manipulate the PDF?
I could download that PDF, save as a Word, copy into Excel, and then be able to filter, because there's, you know, in progress or
Right.
whatever, and now, like, I can't do that anymore.
Well, we should be able to just put 2 versions online,
Okay.
you know, a PDF and an Excel, and people
Yeah, that
can
would be
choose.
awesome.
The thing with Excel is we don't want people to manipulate the data and say this, you know, but I don't
Yeah,
know
I
that
know.
that's that likely to happen.
Yeah.
I
But,
mean,
I mean,
you can make
you could
changes to
buy
it.
the software and do that in
Exactly.
Adobe anyway,
Yeah.
right? If you
Yeah, so
wanted
it
to.
should be easy enough to do a PDF and an Excel version for whatever a person's preference is.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened on the PDF backend.
Okay, and then when it comes to this new software, there's times that we know things are happening, but they weren't on the sheet. Like, what is the kicker for something to get onto that spreadsheet? At what point does the public find out?
So it depends on the nature of the project. So if it's just a preliminary review, we'll, you know, put it up right away because it's not an entitlement submittal. For some big entitlement submittals, we wait until it's deemed complete. So there isn't one answer. If council prefers it goes up right away, whether we've vetted it or looked at it, that it's complete, we can certainly do that. You know, as soon as we get it, it can go online. Again, there's pros and cons to that, because we might immediately start getting calls and we haven't even vetted it yet, and it might give the impression that it's farther along in the process than it is.
Yeah.
So it's always a struggle for us to communicate effectively with the public, but also accurately. But we can certainly put everything we get within reason. We don't put all application materials on the website. There's just not enough capacity digitally to do that.
Yeah.
But we can put the new application, if we get it on a Thursday, we can put it on there on Friday. It's just part of our education. When people call or email to explain, well, we haven't looked at it yet, and sometimes it appears that we're not paying attention. It's just, you know, it just came in and we have to process it.
Well, I mean, not for now, but I think with your new software, once that's kicked off, it'll be easier to do it. But I was just wondering what the kicker was. Like, when does it slide over, and when, you know,
Yeah,
does it
so
not?
it basically depends on the complexity of a project. If it's relatively straightforward and it requires a few things and we don't really need to vet it, it'll go on there. If it's a very complex vesting tentative map, general plan amendment, and we need 30 things and we only got 10, is it worth putting the 10 up while we're, and we don't want to give a sense that it's farther along than it is? There's no one way to do it. So we
Okay.
can certainly err on the side of putting more up there earlier. It's just part of public education if people do
Yeah.
call to explain.
Maybe we just go if there's something that people are super interested in, like that happens sometimes, and they think we're hiding stuff from them, like.
Absolutely.
In those
Yep.
cases, maybe, I mean, if no one's asking, then maybe it's not, and you're still working on it in the background.
And sometimes we learn what people are interested in because they call and say, where is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that one people are keyed into. And so there's no precise one way to do it. I would always want to err on the side of informing the public. It's just with these more complex projects, we can go back and forth with an applicant 3 or 4 times to get, and then we're replacing the material that they resubmit, and you become more vulnerable to having incorrect information up there too.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
So now for the actual initiatives. So in addition to the projects we're currently working on that I just listed, we have 3 initiatives for council to consider. The first involves a focused zoning ordinance update. So the city started a comprehensive zoning update in around early 2020, and we had a joint session earlier this calendar year, and we received feedback that the scope of the project was probably too broad, and there were too many undesirable changes to residential zoning designations proposed. So based on this feedback, staff will be seeking council direction in 2022 on a revised project scope, which would be more focused on changes to the zoning ordinance that need to be made to be consistent with state law. This could include objective design standards to be in compliance with SB 330, which was a law signed in 2019. And we still don't have objective design standards since the adoption of that law. This could possibly be paid for with SB2 grant funds, which we've already received an SB2 grant. So this would be refocusing the scope of that grant. Maybe some general fund depending on council direction, and a lot of planning staff time.
Is there any funds left, I mean, from when we originally did
There are.
this? Okay.
There are, yeah. So the SB2 grant is $310,000. So next proposed initiative is to develop an implementation plan for the general plan, conservation, and open space element. So as I mentioned earlier, staff is already working on this and working on bringing it back to council in February. But we included it as a strategic initiative because it really is a new focus for the department to focus on green initiatives and conservation. And depending on council direction, there may be components of that plan that would be worked on over the next year to 2 years. So that's why we've included it as a a strategic plan initiative. This could require general fund dollars depending on what council direction they give us and you give us in February, and it would require staff time.
It says significant general fund. What do you mean by significant?
I think it's possible significant. So we mean anything over 100,000 could be significant, so it depends on council direction.
Okay. And will you be working with Parks on this? Because this is something that Parks does incorporate open space in
Right.
its master plan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the implementation plan and the general plan has action items for community development department, has action items for Parks and Rec. So we would be bringing a check-in of the status of those action items to date, and that would include Parks and community development. So we would work closely on that, and then we would cost out what's left. So there's a checklist in the general plan. I don't know if you're all familiar at the end. So we would go item by item for the action items in general plan, what the status is, and if we haven't completed it, what a cost estimate might be to complete it. So the council will get a menu, and that's why it's a strategic initiative, because some of those things could knock off fairly quickly in a couple weeks. Some of them could take a little longer to implement.
A question about the open space. So that's all about conserving our open space that we have now, right?
It's mostly, but there's some other policies in there about air quality and some other conservation, environmental type policies.
So my fear about open space is that, and I think I've said before, is that the state is going to start deciding how much open space we can really have and override anything we have in our zoning or, you know, our code, whatever. Would it be better for us to make it a voter initiative, like classify all of the actual open space, put it on a ballot and have voters decide? Would our open space be better protected at that point?
By that method. So possibly council could give us that direction in February. So that's not in the general plan today. So remember, this is checking in with all the action items that are in the general plan. That's not one of them. There's no reason, if council directed us to, that couldn't become one of them, right?
Okay, so I thought we were talking about protecting open space before, but this isn't about that. This is something else.
This is a check-in on the conservation open space element of the general plan.
Okay.
So there are policies in there that address how we protect city-owned open space
Okay.
and privately owned open space, but what you're describing isn't in the general plan today.
Okay, so it would be an adjustment to that, like just the lever that we use to protect it would be a change.
Right, so it would be a policy change to that section of the general plan that then you would direct staff to implement, and we could, again, so that's why this is a strategic initiative, because that might be something that takes more staff time or legal time than some other element of that we can just check off.
And is that something, and I don't know who answered, is that something we discuss today, or is that something we discuss when you bring back the checklist?
It could work either way, and it doesn't have to be in the general plan to do an initiative like what you're talking about. So when we get to the end of today's workshop, that could be an initiative
Okay.
you add to the list, and then we prioritize the top 10, and we can come back with those action items.
Okay,
Yeah, so these are our department's proposed initiatives. If that's an initiative you'd rather, or in addition, we focus on today, that could be a part of that discussion. Or, you know, if you want to just wait till February when we're talking about the whole element, that's.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
So one of the things to kind of back what Councilmember Mendoza is talking about, we've already discussed the fact that there was a state bill presented that was going to address dormant golf courses. So I do think it's something that we need to prioritize. It didn't pass this year, but as we know from like housing bills, it can take several years for them to come back, but they typically do, like a bad penny or whatever that saying is. But I do support that, and my understanding was that when we get this full presentation in February, it would also have your low-hanging fruit and your the least expensive options that would be the most easy to implement on a short-term basis, and
Yep.
so all of that is going to be worked in on February as well.
Yes, so that checklist I mentioned will be costed. We'll show you what's completed, and we would identify what's the low-hanging fruit, you know, the easiest to do, the quickest to do. That's what I would define as low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And then this is a little more complex, a little more expensive, or, you know, and that's how we would present that to council so you can prioritize. Kind of like a mini version of what we're doing right now with the strategic plan.
And we can highlight which ones will be the most impactful to
Right.
protect that open space as well,
Right.
not just the low-hanging fruit that's easy. If it doesn't do as much, then
Yeah, I mean, but
that's not of
part
interest,
of
right?
putting this in today's presentation is that we can also allocate long-term planning and funding for the same kind of purpose.
Right.
Okay. And the idea of the initiative could be part of both discussions that is
Yes.
being mentioned?
Well, at this point, we could decide to put it on the ballot. It wouldn't even be an initiative, because it's not resident-driven. It would be just the council members decide, do we want to put this on the ballot? Right? I think that's
If
the
we're
way
understanding correctly, right?
Damien gets his
Yeah. Feedback,
very
please.
quiet back there.
That's how I like it at these workshops, just being very quiet. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, with regard to a ballot initiative to better protect city open space, it's certainly a possibility. I can't say with absolute certainty that that will give us any more bulletproof protection from what the state might do. It could, but a lot depends on what the state ends up doing. So it would require a further review, a further look at before we just say, let's put it on the ballot. There'd be a number of steps we'd have to take, and I'd want to give it some thorough legal review. And even with that, the state still could pass some law that would override it. I think it'd still be a possibility. But certainly, items approved by the voters do generally have better protection against state laws than items that are not. But even those could be vulnerable.
So in looking at the timing of all of this, if we were to be interested in doing something like that, do we have enough time to get it on the next election? To get voted on?
Margaret's got the expertise on that, but I believe if you have it before August, you could hit a November date. Don't quote me on that.
I think it'd be dependent on what election you're looking at. I don't think you'd likely be able to make June, but certainly next November is a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to these ways to protect, the city of Brentwood is a member of the East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy as well. There are properties that I'm a board member, have been representing the city of Brentwood from city council since 2010 for the Habitat Conservancy, which does conserve property as a remittance for developers in Contra Costa County, specifically in Brentwood. That's part of the wording. Brentwood gets to keep much of the properties for Brentwood development conservation. So there could be a conversation that the city has with the Habitat Conservancy regarding purchase of the properties as perpetually protected as well. I don't know what properties, I don't know how much, and I know there's a list, a triage list of high priority, low priority, but it's something worth looking into as well. So that could be a source of funding for protection of some of our properties,
But
in addition to what we're talking about.
But isn't that outside our city limits? I mean, most of the stuff that we've, that has been in the conservation has been outside of our city limits, not within it. And I think we want to make sure that we conserve properties within our city limits.
So the Marsh Creek corridor is on that list as well. There are some properties within our city limits that could potentially qualify. So it's worth looking into to see what might not.
But the other thing you bring up that's a good point, Mayor Bryant, is that we have a lot of residents that are really interested in this topic specifically for a lot of different reasons. And I think the idea of creating, again, some sort of ad hoc or task force or something around looking at possibilities and ways to do this and ways to identify and partnering with agencies like the Conservancy to get that expert opinion in here, I think that might be something to look at too, moving forward.
So if we bring this initiative concept in February with all the other open space concepts and analysis, will that work timing-wise? In light of the SB9 we're working on and some of these other things in the next
I think
2
as
months?
long as we understand that if there's a potential of the initiative that Councilmember Mendoza brought up, that there would be the potential for that to actually move forward in a timely manner, and it sounds like there would be if we're understanding correctly.
We could certainly confirm the thresholds for getting it on the November ballot.
Yeah, and if we sense that there's going to be a timing conflict with getting on at least the November
Yeah.
ballot, we can try to expedite things. But
Okay, I mean, I think that we already just talked about this happening in February anyway, and I think for this full discussion, and there's a lot going into this whole thing, so I would be okay with that plan.
Yeah, and I think other cities have done it, so we should probably leverage what other cities have done.
Martinez.
They cataloged all of their open space, whether public or private, and they put it into an initiative. And I think it was resident-driven there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was Martinez was Measure I, if I recall, but yeah, that would definitely be worth looking into.
Yeah, that's when they converted some land use to open space, I think, yeah, a few years ago. Yeah.
And that would look at both the private and the public? Okay.
Right, so it gets more complex because there's private open space, there's city-owned open space, there's habitat conservation easements, there's things that are zoned open space but don't have conservation, so there's a lot of criteria and category for what is open space and how to protect it. So that would be part of it. We would need to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, there's a possibility that through the habitat conservation, if they can purchase properties within the city limit, that could happen a lot quicker, I suppose, than waiting till November election.
But would we want them buying our parks? Like, parks would be part of this, right? We're protecting parks. I don't know if, would parks fall under that?
Oh, I don't know. I was just thinking open space that could become developed
Okay,
at some
so
point.
you would have
if you
different
want to-
buckets, like this they would buy, this they wouldn't, this is private, okay.
Yeah, if you want to put it to an easement, conservation easement for forever, then I wouldn't recommend our parks, but we could look at all that. Yeah.
Yeah, in
Thank you.
February, we'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and the thing is, though, that they're going to prioritize, you know, you got one member of the county, you got one member of Clayton, and is it Pittsburgh and Antioch? I mean, then Oakley. Yeah, so you've got those 5 members who are going to decide where the conservation effort will be, not necessarily us.
Hence the idea of an ad hoc.
It's complex, right? So it's going to need probably more detailed discussion, but we can certainly start it in February. So our last initiative is proposing comprehensive general plan implementation status updates. That's a mouthful. Every 2 years. The city's general plan is now 7 years old, so our recent discussion about the status of the conservation and open space element has made it clear that we could improve our efforts to track the implementation of the overall general plan as a city. It's not required. There's no statute or law that says we have to do this every 2 years, but it is best practice. It helps with city-wide efforts such as this strategic planning that we're doing right now, with budget planning, to have regular check-ins with your general plan. It's also an important tool to inform our community how we are or aren't making progress to meeting our general plan commitments and policies. The general plan touches on almost every department in the city. It's often seen as a community development department document, but it really has policies and action items that affect the entire city. So this effort would require staff time from multiple departments. It would require a significant amount of staff time because it would be a big undertaking, particularly the first time we did it. It wouldn't necessarily need a huge general fund source of money other than the amount of staff time it would take. So staff is proposing this every 2 years because it is such a significant undertaking, and that's a better allocation of resources from staff's perspective. But we would like council to consider this as a proposed initiative.
Isn't the general plan, isn't it supposed to be updated annually?
So the state requires a general plan annual progress report.
Okay, the progress report.
Yeah, there's no format requirement for that. You can put as little or as much into it as you want to submit to state HCD. This would be above and beyond that. So we would still meet our annual reporting requirements, but this would be something, more comprehensive.
What would be your head count ask for the significant time?
Head count?
Yeah.
So it'd probably be the department heads for a minimum amount of time, a couple hours, to sit and go through the checklist and give us updates. And then most likely myself and the assistant city manager would have to spend, the first time it'll be fairly time consuming, probably a couple weeks total, spread out over, a few months.
Okay, so it's not like I was thinking like a whole head count or half a head count or something.
Well, not a whole staff person, but all of this adds up to we don't have enough resources in the community development department, particularly in the planning division, to focus on all of these things. We just don't have the right.
Are we in the process of hiring somebody to fill Debbie Hill's?
Yeah, recruitment closed on Monday for that position.
Okay.
And a little sneak peek, we're going to come back to you in January, request to hire 2 out of that recruitment because of all the land use issues that we're dealing with all at once. All these specific plans all coming to a head at once, the zoning code ordinance. Normally a city does 1 of those at a time, we're doing 4. So if we want to get those all done in a timely manner and protect our residential properties with SB 9, some of these zoning code opportunities, so we don't have too many car washes, all those things that we've been talking about over the year, we need to probably bring another additional resource in and expedite getting those protections in place for our community.
Well, that's why I was asking, because how many hours do you need another head count? And should we be talking about the head count today? Like, all of those things are happening today. They're not happening in February. So do we need to talk about a head count today? Because I see a need for you guys. A lot of these departments, our city has grown a ton, and you guys are all stretched really, really thin. And we ask for a lot. So we should be able to take care of you, from a work-life balance perspective whenever possible. So be honest about the hours and let us know what you need from us also.
So the thought was the other planner is an immediate need separate from whatever strategic initiatives council might give to the community development department. So it's not an ask in here because we need it for our current workload, those slides that I just went through. So Tim's proposal was to bring that as a mid-year budget adjustment separate from the strategic plan process. I think if we have 2 senior planners, a planning manager, a community development director, we could achieve a lot more than we can today with our staffing levels.
Don't we, or is Eric going somewhere?
No, planning manager. That's what I was saying. If we had 2 senior planners and a planning manager. Right now, we have 1 senior planner and a planning manager.
Okay.
So that would be the
Right,
additional
yeah,
half.
I was thinking, we already have a planning manager. Where's Eric going if we
Eric's
need another one?
watching
He's
right
not allowed to
now.
leave.
We can't
It's
lose
okay.
Eric, too.
It's okay, Eric, he's watching. So the FTEs in the planning division right now are a planning manager, a senior planner, 2 associate planners, and an administrative staff person. Okay.
And
So-
question two, I've seen somewhere in here from looking over this last night that there's internship programs that are going to be pushed a little bit further in, but can you use an intern for the administrative end of things? I know it's complicated, but is it more work than it is benefit, bringing in someone like that?
Do you want an intern work on SB9?
No, I'm talking about the administrative end, like the
right.
data entry or the typing
There
of the
could be some.
documents or whatever it is.
There could be some.
I think, yeah, I think we're covered in the administrative department. So the challenge with planning in the state of California is it's getting more and more complex every year. The past 5 years, being a planner the level of complexity has escalated astronomically. Case laws that we have to incorporate, every legislative session now, I'm anticipating will be a deluge of changes to how we do business. Over 30 bills were signed related to housing that, to be honest, I don't have a lot of capacity to read through those 30 bills and figure out how they're affecting our department, with our current workloads. We have to have a consultant. So it's just become more and more complex to be a planner. So I think the senior level support would be more beneficial to the city.
And one of the things I remember talking about in previous meetings is an intern to follow the legislative
Yes.
cycle and to look at not only housing bills, but any bills, and like just give brief overviews so that we know which ones we need to track more closely. But I do feel like that's a perfect spot for an intern trying to get into that kind of work.
I think a number of our departments are being affected by every legislative session. There's just, and these aren't minor changes to what we do. Some of these are sea changes in how we do things like SB 330, SB 9, AB 215. I could go on, and the police department's faced with the same thing. And so it's a real issue to keep on top of that with your day-to-day workload, for sure. And you have to keep on top of it. It's not an option. So that really concludes my presentation. I wasn't as concise as I hoped. I'm sorry. So just to conclude, your community development department is a team of very hardworking professionals who manage a very demanding workload every day, and I think do a very good job at it. The department's proposed strategic initiatives, Chief Hansen was like, "Are you crazy? Why are you asking for more work in the form of these initiatives?" But I think they really do focus on process improvements and adding value for the community. And I'm happy to have council consider those proposed initiatives. I'm happy to answer if you have any more questions. Or lunch.
Well, I think you did an outstanding job fielding the questions as we went.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we have any further questions? Right?
We could talk about this forever, but
Yeah. I could.
Okay, well,
Just appreciate the focus on trying to make things better and more transparent for the community and improve communications and all that. I think that's just fantastic. Thank you.